last week, Acosta was supposed to report on a meeting and press conference involving Trump and the visiting president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro. Instead, Acosta went on a whiny rant about how both Trump and Bolsonaro don't like him and effectively bullied the CNN correspondent by refusing to call on him. Acosta complained on air that a reporter from the Daily Caller was called on, that Brazil's president used the term fake news, and that conservatives are pushing back against the bias they face on social media platforms. There was a lot of that going on during this news conference, but I think, Brooke, the thing that has to be noted, and we'd be remiss if we didn't note it, is that when the president of Brazil mentioned the term fake news, he got sort of a smile and a nod from President Trump. And, you know, this is something that we've seen since President Trump came into office, called this network fake news. His referring to the press as the enemy of the people and so on is that this is a virus that is spreading around the world, Acosta said, according to a clip flagged by Newsbusters. When you have the president of Brazil calling the press fake news, he is trying to essentially, you know, in a sycophantic sort of way, suck up to the president of the United States, Acosta continued. There's no other way of putting it, and trying to emulate him down, as they call him in Brazil, as the Trump of the tropics. You know, this is another example of when the President of the United States says something here in the United States referring to the press as fake news, referring to the press in other derogatory terms. Other leaders around the world, other governments around the world are listening, and Jair Bolsonaro proved that to all of us here in this Rose Garden news conference. Brooke. Acosta, who had his press credentials suspended last year for making contact with a White House aide during a news conference, was confronted by Angel Moms last month after he challenged Trump over what he described as a disconnect in his description of illegal immigration, Fox News' Brian Flood reported. Bolsonaro, who is a right-wing populist, praised Trump after he described past administrations as being anti-US. Later on in the news conference, he talked about this conservative grievance that they're being discriminated against in social media. Acosta continued. The president has, you know, a gazillion Twitter followers. He has a massive presence on Instagram, has a massive presence on Facebook. So do lots of other conservative figures here in the United States, and so, you know, the president, he likes to talk about how there's this media collusion game that is stacked against him when he has one of the most powerful social media voices throughout. And so I think that just has to be said as well. It has to be put on the record that he is sort of, you know, pulling a three-card Monty in terms of, you know, how he's describing the situation. Conservatives aren't being discriminated and abused on social media, Acosta claimed. They have just as much of a landscape that they dominate as the left does, and one could argue that they have a much bigger footprint when it comes to social media and the media landscape by and large. Brooke. As a supposedly objective news media outlet, you've got a real problem when the antics of your reporter is more of a story than the stories he's supposed to be covering. That's what CNN's Jim Acosta has become since the election of Donald Trump. Prior to Trump moving into the White House, few Americans would be able to recall the name of that gray-haired pouty White House correspondent, because Acosta wasn't the story. But since Trump became president, and Acosta started making his mark by going far beyond just reporting the facts, he's become a household name.